All right, so now we are going to our bubble case of the week. This is pretty unique because we're going over six players, all with PED histories. First of all, we'll kind of start out with our views on PEDs and where they belong in the Hall of Fame. So, Daniel, start out. What do you view? How do you view PED guys on the Hall of Fame ballot?
So to understand where I'm at now, I think you need to go back to when I was in eighth grade, ninth grade. We'll say ninth grade, just starting out high school around this time in that year. I was against steroids. I didn't think that PED users had a place in Cooperstown. I didn't understand why we needed to celebrate these people who cheated the game. And then Mike Piazza got in, and the second he got in, Chris, the very second, I was like, okay, floodgates are open now. Let them all in because Mike. Not only is Mike Piazza a like suspected PED user, no. He admitted to it. He said before he got in an autobiography that he wrote in 2013, years before, that he took Andro, which is a steroid. The only difference, of course, was that it wasn't classified as a steroid when he took it. Now, with that being said, nothing was really classified as a steroid in Major League Baseball up until 2004, which is something that means a lot to you in this case. So I don't understand why we have guys like Piazza, and then since guys like Jeff Bagwell, Pudge Rodriguez were in the Hall of Fame who had suspected PED use. Obviously, they never actually tested positive. They were never suspended, but they're in the Hall of Fame. So why can't we let all of them in? Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, it almost seems like they shouldn't have been as good because it was so obvious that they were taking PEDs and whatnot. So I don't understand why we leave them out and we let other guys in. So as soon as Piazza got in, I was all for steroids. But I do have a bit of a heightened standard. If you are a suspected PED user, I think you need to have convinced me during your career that you could have been a Hall of Fame producer without it. Or you just have to live up to a certain standard where you were just too good, even on steroids, for me not to let you in. And some of the guys on this list passed that standard, some didn't. And we'll get into that in a second. But Chris, I'll let you go into your PED boundaries.
Yeah, so my views on guys with PED histories have definitely evolved, especially in the past year or so. Just doing my own research, like when I was getting into baseball, this was right at the tail end of, everyone was getting all the news about steroids was coming out, and A-Rod had a big target on his back because there was, he was suspected for steroids back in like 2008, 2009. There was a huge stigma about steroids so bad, and how could they have done this? So I was kind of led to believe, that they were a very bad thing. So, I didn't really and then like, you know, I wasn't really paying that much attention to the Hall of Fame until like high school anyway. So I just thought, steroids bad. And then I saw that like, you know, people who I respected in like baseball writing were putting Bonds and Clemens on their ballot. So I was like, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. So I was like, all right. So I was more open to like the Bonds Clemens types. And then I think fall of like 2019, I looked up when like testing started for PED use, and testing started in '03. So last year I kind of did it based on like who was good before '03. And then I realized now that PED suspensions weren't even handed out till 2005. So now I basically look at, well, first of all, if now how I look at it, if you were never suspended for PEDs, I don't really care, honestly. Steroids were PEDs were legal anyway, pretty much, pretty much legal before 2004. Everyone knew what was going on with PEDs. Everyone knew what was going on with PEDs. Everyone knew how to drug test people. There were office jobs that had drug tests. You think they couldn't do that in Major League Baseball? Everyone knew what was going on. So if you were never suspended for PEDs, I don't really even consider it. And if you played beyond 04 and you didn't get caught, congratulations, you didn't get caught. So there's not really any definitive proof that you were a PED user while it was illegal. Bonds and Clemens did never suspended for PEDs. For players that were suspended for PEDs, there's only one guy on this particular ballot, but there will be more guys on Hall of Fame ballots in the future, especially starting next year with Alex Rodriguez. For guys that were suspended for PEDs, I don't look at it as necessarily an affront to where you you can't. My punishment for a guy who got suspended for PEDs is I'm not counting anything you did after 2004. So, we'll get into Manny Ramirez. I look at basically what did you do before 2005, and then you were taking PEDs beyond 2005. You were not playing on a level playing field because before '05, if you were taking steroids, you were still on a level playing field because it was perfectly legal. So I kind of have I don't really hear a lot of people with my take on it. People still usually, even while PEDs were legal, still look at it like, all right, you were using, you know, most people have kind of your angle on it is like, all right, Bonds and Clemens were clearly the best with or without steroids, so they deserve to be in. I have kind of a weird take on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the best definitive answer I can do with the PED history. So I'm gonna let you get into to the first couple of guys who we're talking about with these
Yeah.
PEDs histories.
So this is big. Bonds and Clemens, obviously, they've been the talking point since they debuted on the ballot in 2013. And they're both in their ninth of 10 years. They are each around 60 to 61% last year. They've had trouble gaining pretty much for the last 3 years, and they haven't netted anything positive thus far this year. Bonds is exactly at net zero. Clemens is -1 because one guy who voted for Clemens but not Bonds decided to go neither, which is very weird. I really don't understand the people who vote Bonds but not Clemens or Clemens but not Bonds, but they are out there, and John Heyman is actually one of them. But they do them, and they are the best two PED users in history, so to speak. I mean, Bonds is, you could say he's the best player of all time. Clemens, you could say, is the best pitcher of all time. Bonds has the most MVP awards with 7. Clemens has the most Cy Young awards, also with 7. Bonds is the all-time home run leader. Clemens, I'm pretty sure, is close to the all-time strikeout leader. I think only Nolan Ryan is better than him, and maybe
Yeah.
Randy Johnson too. Yeah. Um, so those are those two. This is really, I really can't confidently say at this point if they're going to get in this year or not. Um, I think a lot of people have the belief that a lot of the writers are just going to make them sweat it out until their 10th year, but they're going to need a lot of writers to be on their side going into next year, because around 3 years ago, I envisioned they would be at like 65% at least going into their last year, and they need to gain like 50 votes. They're going to need to do a lot more of that. I would be stunned if they get to 65 this year. Stunned. And that's going to determine the fate of guys in the future, like Manny Ramirez, who we're about to talk about, Gary Sheffield, Sammy Sosa, Andy Pettitte. And next year, you have guys like A-Rod and Ortiz, who also have either allegations or confirmations that they took steroids going on the ballot. And it's going to be tough to let those guys in if we can't let Bonds and Clemens in.
Yeah, that is true. It's a big, this kind of determines the future of
Next year is going to be freaking huge.
yeah, for sure. With Bonds and Clemens, because yeah, if those two don't get in, then I would say goodbye to
All the
Manny's
other guys on this
chances.
ballot. I mean, Sosa's also going to be in his last year. I don't think Sosa's getting in anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
so Sosa's not,
yeah,
no. Like though he's been on 9 ballots, he hasn't gotten above
like 30%.
15% yet.
No.
Yeah, he just is not getting that love. But yeah, it's a big deal for the future of the Hall of Fame. Because yeah, I mean, yeah, both suspected PED users, probably confirmed PED users, but yeah, I mean, back back to the point of Mike Piazza and Jeff Bagwell were also suspected PED users.
And
Piazza
Bud
confirmed.
Rodriguez, and who went first ballot.
Yeah. Um, so it's pretty wild. We've discussed it. It's kind of a popularity contest as it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then we go into kind of I guess, likely the third best player on the ballot with performance enhancing drug history. Manny Ramirez. He is on his fifth ballot, and he has been between 22 and 29% each year he's been on. Thus far, he has netted +4 and is at 34.9% of the vote. So, he's not getting in anytime soon. But I mean, I guess there's potential if Bonds and Clemens find a way in, Ramirez could find a way in later on. And yeah, likely the third best player on the ballot with PED history. He's the only player on the ballot who has been suspended for performance enhancing drugs. So it's been confirmed 100% that while he played, he used performance enhancing drugs. He was suspended twice for performance enhancing drugs. And when we go through my line of thinking, look at what he did before 2005. He didn't play at a level playing field after 05 because PEDs were illegal. So before 05, he had 50.7 career B WAR, 50.2 career F WAR, and a 156 OPS plus in a little over 6,500 plate appearances. So how I look at Manny Ramirez, like through 2004, is a very Ralph Kiner like career. If you just took what he did in his first, I guess it would be 12 years of baseball. If you don't know, Ralph Kiner was a guy who
Played 12 years.
he played, yeah, he played 12 years, and he was consistently like a top 5 finisher in MVPs, but he didn't get like the crazy count statistics because he got injured and retired at like the age of 32 or something like that.
Yeah.
Ramirez as a whole, very, very impressive career. 69.3 career B WAR, 66.3 career F WAR, and a 154 career OPS plus in 9,774 plate appearances. He's top 20 both. He's top 20 all time in both home runs and RBI. 555 home runs, 1,831 RBI, and he is 9th all time in OPS with a 996 and 25th all time in OPS plus. So, how do you look at Manny Ramirez?
I have voted for him in the last 2 years. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and he
Not including this year.
Yeah,
but last year and the year before that, I voted for Manny Ramirez.
Yeah, and you've mentioned. I remember your reasoning in last year's like 996 OPS. That meets your threshold for.
Yeah, I mean,
a guy who was on PEDs.
That's literally 4 points behind Mike Trout's career.
Yeah, it's 996 OPS is pretty crazy, and through 2004 he had a career 1010 OPS, which is insane what that guy was able to do, and very, very interesting character as well. But yeah, that's Manny Ramirez. So that's kind of what he is as a player. Only guy suspended for PEDs. Very impressive resume in terms of his statistics. Then you get into Gary Sheffield, who actually last year I didn't know had PED history, but he does.
Was in the Mitchell report, but that was it.
Mitchell report, and I think.
And even then, a lot of people have denounced the Mitchell report because it wasn't actually like a PED test. I believe it was like an anonymous survey about testing, right? Okay. I'm pretty sure that's what the Mitchell report actually was.
I'm not sure, but he also was linked to the same company that helped out
McGuire and Sosa.
and Barry Bonds, Balco.
Balco, yeah.
He was in that whole Balco thing. I just remember that whatever that word is um for the thing, Balco is, it's all capital letters. I don't know. It makes a word, and it's all all the letters stand for something, whatever that means. That was the company. But yeah, Sheffield is on his seventh ballot. So he's got, after this year, he's got three more. And
Yeah,
he
okay,
was,
hold on. Can I just pause for something? Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
The player, this is from Wikipedia. So take that however you will. But the Players Association had agreed to anonymous testing in 2003, only to find out the list of players testing positive was turned over to the government as part of this is what Balco is, Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative Investigation, which later became the Mitchell Report. So the Mitchell Report wasn't actually supposed to become public information. It was basically supposed to be a survey about testing, and it leaked. And the players who were mentioned in it have had a witch hunt against them, specifically in the Hall of Fame. So that has been that.
Yeah, it's wild. And I think it was all a tool. It was a tool for the government to kind of promote which drugs they wanted, whatever, on the market. So
Right.
it's a real dirty thing. It's, like, it's a real slap in the face to the players, because ultimately, uh, Bud Selig knew exactly what was going on,
It
and
is
everyone
like, and guess where Bud Selig is?
he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
He's
Bud
got a plaque.
Selig. That's that. We haven't even mentioned that. Like I've talked so much about like how there are already PED users, and the guy who let the whole thing happen for like 15 years is in the Hall of Fame, and we can't let his own subjects in, which is madness.
Yeah, it's it's
Like
crazy.
he
Yeah.
knew, not only did he know that it was happening, but like under the table, that he was like openly encouraging it, because baseball was in its lowest point after the players strike of 94, which canceled the World Series. They needed a way to get people back in the stadiums. And they were like, all right, needles in arms, 500-foot home runs, 100 miles an hour pitches, fastballs, people. And that's what happened. And the steroid era pretty much saved baseball.
Yeah, 1400 OPSs at age 39.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Roger Clemens, he's got the ERA title at 42. Don't worry about it.
It's okay.
He's good. I think it's the TB12 method. I know it's 2005, but I think he's got that method down.
I mean, he had 3 rings at that time. It was probably out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure Roger Clemens could have had access to Tom Brady in 2005 and be like, "Hey, man, let me tell you the secret."
Yeah. Even though Brady was a young lad at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm sure the TB12 method was, it was taking place.
Yeah.
Just it wasn't public information. That's all.
It wasn't. So yeah.
So anyway, Gary Sheffield.
Yeah. To wrap it up, steroids didn't prolong anyone's career. It was really just the TB12 method.
It was the TB12 method, and the fact that a lot of these guys, I think Gary Sheffield included, didn't take steroids with the intent of like hitting 1,000-foot bombs. It was injury relief.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
I mean,
that
it is sketchy in some. Sorry to interrupt, but like Manny had like female like fertility pills. Like that's obviously like you're not taking that for rehab.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's like an advantage too, but it was legal anyway, so
No, Manny was just trying to get pregnant. It's all right.
yeah,
It's just Manny being Manny.
it's all it was. If if any
He's
man could
trying.
give birth, I think Manny Ramirez could be that guy. But anyway, Gary Sheffield, he's on his seventh ballot. He's got three more after this year. He was between 11 and 14% in his first 5 times on the ballot. Made a significant jump last year, jumped up to 30.5% in 2020, and thus far has netted plus 15 and is currently at 46.3% of the vote. So I'm thinking that's mostly voters who also vote Bonds Clemens, who probably have more room on the ballot this year and are adding Sheffield to that mix, I would guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but I guess in my opinion, it's arguable that he is sort of a bubble case with or without PEDs, although, or in other words, he is very comparable to, in terms of wins above replacement, to guys that are bubble cases like Bobby Abreu. He's behind Bobby Abreu in both peak WAR and JAWS, which is the average between total wins above replacement and peak wins above replacement. Peak wins above replacement, of course, your
Is your
best
best
7 years
season.
of
Yep,
wins above replacement. Sheffield has 60.5 career B WAR and 62.1 career F WAR. What makes him stand out and what makes him a very popular pick is he was spectacular offensively. 140 career OPS plus, 907 career OPS in general in 10,947 career plate appearances. So he had that longevity too. But worst defensive runs above average of all time. So definitely a liability
yeah,
defensively, but offensively very good. 509 career home runs and 2,689 career hits. You are at, or I guess this is already revealed. You're adding him this year.
I did.
Yeah. What are you? What are your thoughts on Sheffield?
The offense was. I honestly just didn't take a hard enough look into his offense before this year, and I think that was kind of it. I remember last year when we did our ballot reveal, you were like, "Yeah, by the way, Gary Sheffield had a 907 OPS," and I was like, "What?" So I
Yeah.
looked more into it, and I decided it was time. So, yeah, that was kind of a lot of went into my decision.
Yeah. He spectacular offensive player. I think 80 offensive wins above
Yeah,
replacement,
and then
80
like
OWAR.
negative 27 D war, something like
Yeah.
that.
It's bad in terms of defense, but offensively one of the best to ever do it. And Sammy Sosa is the second to last player we'll be talking about. He is, along with Bonds and Clemens, on his ninth ballot. He has never gotten above 13.9%, and thus far he has netted +6 and is at 22.1%. It's kind of safe to say he won't get in the traditional BBWAA form.
Not.
Maybe maybe sometime in the future on a veterans committee or something like that. But he is worth mentioning because he's definitely someone to consider. A lot of this Hall of Fame stuff is like, who do we get mad at not getting into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
This is why we're
And
evaluating
in
who.
very rare cases, who do we get mad at getting into the Hall of Fame?
Yes,
We
yes,
haven't
that
had
is.
one of those in a couple years, but they do come and go every now and then.
Yeah, that's true.
And
And
most of the time, it's not the BBWAA that does it.
yes, that is true. Um, Sammy Sosa is another guy. It's arguable that he is a bubble case, in terms of wins above replacement and stuff. With or without PEDs, 58.6 career B WAR for Sosa and 60.1 career F WAR. So he's right on that fringe in terms of wins above replacement. He also has a very defined peak, as noted before, that's likely linked to performance enhancing drugs, where he was, right up there with McGuire with home runs. But before that, before like 1993, he was not really making any impact with his teams. And then after '03, he kind of just disappeared. After like '03, '04, it kind of disappeared. His career OPS plus is 128 in 9,896 career plate appearances. He is ninth all time in home runs, one of the members of the 600 home run club with 609 career home runs. But I guess something we've kind of alluded to is his home runs per se may not carry as much meaning as, a regular member of the 600 home run club like Albert Pujols or Willie Mays. It's because he has these lowest OPS plus of anyone in the 600 home run club and the second lowest OPS plus of anyone in the 500 home run club. I believe there's 26 other members of the home run club, and he's a guy that you have consistently left off. I think it's because of the he just doesn't meet that
I'll
threshold.
explain. Yeah, I'll explain a lot more in a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty defined. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do do you want to go over that when we do the ballot reveal?
yeah, we'll do it in a when we finish all this.
Yeah, I guess we could explain like some of the bubble cases and explain like why we're not voting for them this year, after we reveal who we will be voting for. And the last PED player, Andy Pettitte, who, he admitted to using PEDs for a brief period, I think when he was on the Astros. Um, didn't never suspended for PEDs. He's on his third ballot, got 11.3% of the vote in 2020, and he has netted +8 thus far and has 16.1% of the vote. He's another guy arguable that he is a bubble case with or without PED, so that's kind of something that you could put against him. His career B WAR is 60.2, career F WAR 68.2. F WAR definitely favors him more. He is also the all-time leader in playoff innings, starts, and wins, and he is fourth all-time in playoff win probability added. So, he was a big part of the Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s, and also played a role in the playoff runs of the 2004 and 2005 Astros, to go along with that. With all those innings, had 276 and 2/3 playoff innings, which is pretty wild that he was there for that long. Pettitte also not a very definitive peak. He is very far off from the average Hall of Fame starting pitcher in terms of peak WAR. And the last thing to mention about Pettitte in terms of where he stands statistically, his career innings ERA plus, B WAR, and peak WAR are extremely comparable to Mark Burley. You
Yeah.
mentioned that to me earlier this year, but what would you say about Andy Pettitte?
Um, I mean, Burley is already a fringe candidate, so if you add in the PED allegations, that obviously doesn't make a strong case for him. But I can understand why some people would choose to vote for him.
Yeah, he he's kind of he's a big part of the story of baseball. If you want to go into like the romantic side of baseball, he was always in the playoffs, and he did. He wasn't great in the playoffs, but he was very good in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
that's something to
He just got a lot of opportunities.
yeah, he got a lot of opportunities, and he was he was his regular season numbers and postseason numbers are pretty comparable, and that's just kind of like pretty good pitcher for a long time. But yeah, that's kind of those are the PED players. That's kind of a breakdown of where they're at, how good they were in general, whether how their careers panned out, how they differentiate, why we may not be voting for some and not others. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown of the PED players.